Welcome to Let's Talk Indie, the no bullshit podcast about today's music industry and all that it offers. Welcome to Let's Talk Indie. My name is Sean, and we have Ian here with me tonight.
That's me.
And we're going to talk to you about indie music here on Let's Talk Indie.
Yes.
This is episode number 3. Let's chit-chat a little bit, and I sent Ian a little article that I thought was pretty interesting that could bring up some good points. And him, again, not being part of the music industry, this is going to be kind of probably an interesting read for him because I don't think he realizes how shitty record deals are.
Well, no, I've always heard that they're just complete crap.
Yes.
So it's like the article is, explains why artists are turning away from record deals, and it's like, as an artist myself, I don't have any success whatsoever, but if I was, trying to put together an album or trying to get it out there, there's lots of different independent avenues that you could take if you just wanted to distribute it digitally. Now, as far as physical copies, I have no idea how to get started with that. In a world where indie music experts explain why artists are turning away from record deals. Why record deals are bad deals. This is the worst deal in the history of deals.
What the fuck?
It's like the Wild West now.
Yeah.
It's crazy because back in the day, so basically this woman, Amy Wang, wrote an article, and you guys can check it out. We'll put it at the bottom of the podcast notes. But it's a really great article, and it basically just kind of says, Chance the Rapper made Grammy history last year by being the first independent artist to snag a Grammy, which is pretty amazing for an independent artist. In the olden days, if you didn't have a record deal, you could not do anything. There was no career for you.
Yeah, because there's no way to get the music out there, especially.
No, absolutely none. So what they did back then was they pretty much owned the music channels, the big record labels. And with the advent of the internet, things have definitely changed. Now people, I think you've read, Spotify is letting artists upload directly to them. And I mean, that's pretty cool when you think about that, because what's going on there is that they're basically just being their own record label now.
You've uploaded to Spotify, right?
Well, we've had sort of third-party people that we have gone through that put us on there, but that is going to be a thing of the past. Like we use CD Baby, for example, So CD Baby puts us on all these different platforms out there, and we get a cut, they get a cut. But if we wanted to, our next release we could put out on our own and basically just put it directly to Spotify, which is really cool. They even mentioned one woman was releasing an album at a hotel. So basically stay at the hotel and you get a copy of her album in your hotel room. Sweet. Which is pretty cool. So if it's hot jazz.
How about that guy at McDonald's who got arrested for handing out mixtapes and Happy Meals?
Wow.
That's one way to do it.
That is, dude. No, that is one way to do it. You say that when Ritual was in its heyday, we used to discuss crazy shit like the big trick back in the day was that you would order a pizza and you'd put your CD in the pizza box with the pizza.
Okay.
Yep. That was one way. Or you'd try different things, or you'd send chocolates, and in the box of chocolates is your CD or something. You get really creative. I mean, those, again, getting back to what we discussed the last episode, not the long time ago, but the last episode.
Days ago.
Yeah, years. Years! But, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, good job on the echo, though. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. But the big takeaway from that is when you signed a record deal, you got 20%. That's what you got. So if you sold an album for $10, you got 2 of it. The record label kept the rest.
Wow. So that's why it's like a lot of people say like bands don't make shit from record sales.
They don't.
They make money off of touring.
Merch. Merch
and touring.
Yep. Yeah. And it's strange to think that that's really...
I wonder how much Metallica makes off of their records.
Well, now it's
Well,
different.
now they're pretty damn established. They got people probably climbing over each other to get to them.
That's right. And I don't know what their current situation is, but there's a lot of bands that have signed deals like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's awful. Like, their deals are so bad that, it's not worth it. But now the flip side of that is that it's 80% to the artists at most places, and probably closer to 90%. And whichever avenue you're using to disperse your music, they'll keep 10%, 20%. And if there's no physical copies, well, you can do physical, but if there isn't any, then then it's all it is really you're just...
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody's got to take their cut from allowing you to distribute it on whatever platform you're at. I can see, because for me, it's like the concept of even signing a record label. I don't know why I would even do it if somebody had like a contract in front of me. Like, what's the benefit that you can give me, because I can just go to YouTube and upload my stuff there? And
correct, but before you couldn't. That's the thing. Now is the day of the internet superstar.
Yeah,
right?
so I wonder how the record label industry is gonna transition, or are they just gonna become the way of like Blockbuster when Netflix came out?
That's probably closer to the truth. What they're doing, their tactics, what they're doing now is they're also pretending to be indie labels, because bands
pretending to be.
Yeah,
nice.
And what they'll do is, if they're not doing that, they'll sign somebody to a big record deal, give them lots of money, even just to keep them on the roster, even if they lose money on them.
Yeah.
It's they have them on the roster, and they're not losing that money. Right. It's super strange. The industry they had, again, back in the day, the only way to get your music out was through a record label. If you did not go through a record label, you're fucked.
Wow. So back in the day, what services would a record label offer? Press, okay.
They'd get your shit to radio, and payola was a big thing.
Okay. How about like producing the music? Did you guys have to do that yourself, like record everything yourself?
Yes.
Or?
Well, no. What they would do is they'd give you a budget. So you would go in, they would say, we're going to give you $100,000. Mm-hmm. You can take 20 for living and take 80 and get your ass into the studio and record your album. Right? That's a really low budget, but that's basically how they do it. Now, you owe them that money. So when your records sell, out of your money that you're supposed to be making,
all the record
all
sales
that goes back.
So does the full amount that the record company is taking, so their 80% cut, how much of that is going towards yours? Is it only your 20% that's going towards the...
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, mother God. Yeah,
what? It's a terrible deal. It's a terrible, terrible deal.
Oh, my God. It seems so bad compared to today, because it's like, you can... Like, I got an old MacBook that I scored off of eBay for like $100.
Yeah.
And it came with GarageBand on it. And I plugged my guitar right into it, and I've got access to a shit ton of effects, recording. I got drums, and I can put out songs relatively quick nowadays.
Yep.
Granted, they're not going to be, mastered quality. You might be able to do something with
But you know what?
But
listen to some of the old recordings from the 60s. They're not awesome quality, and they're some of the
it's
biggest
all
songs.
treble.
Yeah, but they're some of the biggest songs ever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a good song at the end of the day is still a good song. I don't know why people would go on a label anymore. That's the reality of it. It's just they have money, and you can make money. The problem is that do you want to be a big fish in a little sea, or a little fish in a big sea? Because that's what you are with a label, right? You come in, you're going to be underneath the big artists that are on the roster.
Yeah.
And they can only delegate so much time and energy and money to you. And all that shit you get billed for.
Yeah.
So indie label, so basically the only type of label I think you would want to be on is like a niche label, like Century Media, who does
Metal Blade Records.
Exactly.
Things like that. I hear Dr. Dre talking about a
Death
label.
Row Records is, if you're going to be on rap, or, there's all sorts of niche labels. But if you're not on one of those niche labels, it's pointless.
If you didn't want to do record label, deal, and you wanted to get out there today, what would your strategy be? Would you just because there's lots of artists who have made it just off of just YouTube and just marketing with their Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They slowly get out there, but how you start getting recognized is, if you start picking up the traction. But how do you engage that. I mean, I guess that's where a record label could come in, but at what cost?
Exactly.
If you're taking 80%, and if you use their services to like record and produce something, then you're in the shitter for the foreseeable future. And if your music just sucks and no one fucking likes it, then
you're up the creek without a paddle. Yeah.
You're quite literally fucked.
Today's guest on Let's Talk Indie is a jazz drummer with extensive touring under his belt. He's a teacher. He's a family. Please welcome fill-in drummer to the stars, Mr. Sean Jensen. So, let's start by me asking, how did you get into music?
Well, that started way back. I was probably about 14. It was like grade 8, I remember, and they just needed a drummer in the school band.
See, everybody starts with the school band.
And most drummers I talk to, that's the story I hear. Nobody applies to be a drummer, but everybody who's a drummer ended up filling that hole, basically, right? So,
speaking of holes. So anyways, by the way, Ian, Sean is married to my cousin, Jamie, who is my, I always go in order. She's my first favorite, Dorothy is my second, and Tyler's my third.
I'm already lost.
But I let them know who's
nice.
Boss, right? I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to make sure that you knew. When you said the school band thing, it was funny because last week the guy we were talking to was, you may or may not know him, but he's the sound guy at the Blue Martini.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about, your most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you on stage, and Ian's was at a school sort of event where he played Metallica. Yeah. It was supposed to be a band, but it ended up being him and a drummer.
Too much bass.
It was sort of like that Cuba thing where they were sonically assaulting people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cleared the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you started, was it more of a bet, or Sean, or what?
No,
what
just
was that?
Some kids I knew at the time were they had started, and the only instrument left was the drums, and so I said, sure, I'll do it. Why not? Right? It sounded kind of cool. It sounded better than French horns and baritones and all that.
Right,
so
it does.
Yeah, right. So I thought, drums, why not? Right. So started, and just lucked out, I guess. It was definitely for me, and I enjoyed it, and I've never been able to read music. I've never read sheet music or never learned other instruments or theory or anything. But the patterns, learning the patterns of drumming, and especially over 4 limbs, was I don't know, just sort of worked with my brain, I guess, playing in patterns and stuff.
Now, didn't you teach as well for a while, drums?
Yeah, sort of part-time, just to fill the gaps a bit. As Jamie and I moved around and landed in new towns, it was kind of easy to just find a few kids that wanted to learn drums, and yeah, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit.
No, but now how did you find teaching? And the reason I'm asking is because it's going to kind of lead into the next question, which is, how did you send them home with homework? Let me just pause right there, because this week what we do on this podcast is we talk about a subject every week.
Okay.
And this week's subject is sheet music, right?
Oh,
so in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about sheet music, like do you like it, or do you use it? Can you read it instead of that kind of bullshit?
Sure.
So when you taught, how did you send them home? Like with guitar, there's tab, right?
Yeah, there's guitar tab.
So I usually had a few books that I'd recommend, usually books that I learned from. So they were sort of the boring books, like the basic rudiments. It's sort of that old standard stick control book. Everybody can get it at any music store. And then there was a rock book by, what's his name? Carmen Apiece. I think he played Rod Stewart. And he's kind of old school.
Cream,
rock,
didn't he?
Maybe. Cream, maybe. No, I can't remember.
No, that might be after. No, he's played with like Ronnie James Dio and some big names.
I think he's more like a big name session guy, and just kind of had that glam rock look to him and a big kit, so he kind of got the gigs for the big stage and stuff. So, but his book, the like Intro to Rock or whatever, like it's the Beginner's Guide to Rock for drummers, and I ate that book up.
So you ate the whole book up. How was it? Was it tasty?
Yeah, right.
Those books by Carmen Apiece and the other one that you recommended, were they sheet music, or were they more of a tab-based kind of thing?
So I'm not really all that up on terminology, but they were, they were basic drum patterns. So I guess it's like sheet music. So, it would give you a 1-bar exercise and then you'd repeat. So it'd be like a
Yep.
basic, snare on the 2 and 4, kick on the 1 and 3, and then either quarters or eighths or sixteenths on the hi-hats just to get your basic beats down. And then you go to exercise 2 and it's like eighths on the kick, like you're still doing quarters, eighths and sixteenths on the hats, but always 2 and 4 on the snare, and then would always add an extra eighth note to the kick until 16 exercises in, you're just doing nothing but eighths on the kick, 2 and 4 on the snare, quarters, eighths or sixteenths on the hi-hat. So you start building up the beats, right? And then it reverses it. It'll do like 1 and 3 on the snare, 2 and 4 on the kick, still alternating hi-hat patterns, and then by the end of it, it's doing like broken eighths, broken 16th notes on the snare and the kick. So you're starting to get more into that rock/funk kind of area. And the book just starts super simple, and every next exercise it would just add one extra little note to the snare or the kick into your beats, and then by the time you're done sort of the first chapter, so to speak, you're just you're feeling really good. Like you can kind of play along to any song on the radio, right? So I'd give kids stuff like that. I'd buy like blank sheet music. I'd figure out which kind of exercises they found easy or sort of got off on, so they could be excited about practicing. And so I write those little patterns out for them, and they could take it home or that kind of thing. So, but mostly it's kids, right? Like me, when I took lessons way back in the day, my practice was my half-hour session with my teacher every week, right? So, but then as you get older, I got into it for my own personal pleasure, and I'd practice more, right? So, and then most of my practice just came from gigging and rehearsing with other guys or jamming or whatever. That's where it all comes from, I find, right? So,
cool. So I'm going to kind of switch this on you. Did you guys not live up north and then went on some fucking tour all over in a fucking bus? Do I not remember stories of this?
Yep, that's right. So Jamie and I lived in Alaska for a little while and met up just some friends that we made while we were living there. They just happened to be in this band called Yukon Rider. And the best way I could describe them is they're like the Alaskan Bare Naked Ladies. They had like a serious songwriter, and then they had a guy who just sang really clever novelty type tunes, and that's always a good combination, right? So, and we went to see them a couple times. I'd hang out with them, we'd drink, I'd help his drummer unload his kit and all that stuff. But their drummer was like, I think he was like well into his 60s, and I remember him saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't do these bar gigs. He was also an ex-alcoholic, and being around bars probably wasn't
that's
for him.
tough.
So they were leaving. September was coming. They were leaving to go on a tour, and the drummer couldn't do it. And it just, timing couldn't have been better. So I got the gig, played with them a little bit around Alaska. They liked my style, and we took off. We went on the road, made it about as far as Florida, and then we fucking hated each other and wanted to pretty much kill each other. But
isn't that the way it always works out, though?
yeah, we were living in like an RV, basically, right? And
that must have smelled like ass, that thing.
It was pretty nasty. It was like basically it was a five-piece band. 4-piece. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it was a 4-piece band. But on our way through British Columbia, we picked up a buddy of mine who's a magician. So he did, right? So he did the opening. He'd open the show with some magic, and then we'd do a set break, and he'd come in the middle and do more magic. And this is at like divey dinky bars who could give a shit about the band or the magician, right? But
oh my god, that's awesome.
Yeah, but we had so much fun.
This is painting such a great picture in my head. I just picture like this tiny ass RV with fucking 5 people stacked in it, and like 2 people at the little dinette table, and like one guy's like, "Hey, you want to see a magic trick?" Yeah. Fucking no, Jerry, I don't.
That's right. Yeah. I'm sick of your magic voodoo crap, man. So it was totally cool, though. That was a trip of a lifetime for sure. So.
Oh my god! And Jamie was the driver, wasn't she?
So we all took turns driving. This was for the record, like this was a full-on RV. This thing was a monster. It was probably like 1970s model, but it was like, Jesus, I don't know, 40 feet long. Like it slept all of us.
At least it had some space.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So the trick was the whole tour started because there was a couple from Alaska that was living in Florida, and they were getting married, and they were going to pay us like $6,500 US to play their wedding. So wow. So and then after that was coming up around Christmas time, and then we had offered in Colorado another guy who used to live in Alaska. These guys had a good name for themselves. Like, they were never famous, but a lot of people knew them. A lot of tourism in Alaska, so they'd see these guys play.
Yep.
And they just had this great. You don't forget this band. They were really good with the crowd, really good at working the crowd and all that stuff. And so we're supposed to also play after the wedding. We were supposed to play in Colorado at a resort, and for New Year's, that resort owner was going to fly us to Hawaii to play at another resort.
Damn,
in Hawaii.
son.
Yeah, but we only made it as far as Florida. We didn't even get to the wedding.
You
date.
couldn't
We
keep it together.
We fucking hated each other by the end of it, man. It was not meant to be. So,
Well, what was the moment that it was just like, fuck it, we're done?
that's a pretty long story, but the main guy who ran the band, I won't say any names or anything because it's all behind us now.
Stitches get stitches.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he was getting into the booze and the coke and all that, and it was just becoming too irresponsible for us. We all had our fun,
Yep.
right? But
Yeah, of course, but business is business at the end of the day.
yeah, so I don't think it was anything major. It was a bunch of little things that led up to one moment. But we had all left the RV one night. We had parked it in this park by a beach somewhere, and we took off to go drinking with the guys in the band that were getting along. And he was supposed to stay back. He didn't want to go out, and he was supposed to watch our dog. So we also had our pets with us on this trip too, right? And
Okay.
anyway, so we came back at like 3 a.m, and he's like passed out outside the RV, hammered drunk, and our dog is gone. And we have our dog.
Oh, fuck.
And this was Chachi. I don't know if you met Chachi, but he was like the dog, right? And anyway, so we had to spend our drunken wee hours of
Great
the morning running down this beach trying to find our dog, and we did. So we went.
Not impressed.
Yeah, not impressed at all, right? So anyway, so we just sort of got into a bit of heated argument. I believe some fists were raised, and that was it. We basically,
That was it.
that was pretty much it. So we the next morning we basically just packed everything up, and he took off. We stayed in Florida. He actually did the right thing. He paid us the money to date. We all had about $1,100 coming to us.
Wow.
And so there's 4 of us in, I forget where we were, just before Florida somewhere. And so we just sort of pooled our money together. We rented a car, put our equipment in storage, and we took off to New Orleans for a week. And
Damn.
continued the party, man. Had a pretty wicked time.
You're not a musician at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a crazy trip, to say the least. So.
Fucking good for you.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the topic of the week, which is sheet music. Now, you mentioned earlier that you don't really read sheet music. You have I'm guessing kind of some sort of drum tab is what you use typically.
No, I don't.
Is that correct?
Honestly, I play by ear. I don't. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I just have this great knack of knowing where the other.
I do the same thing.
Yeah,
Sean.
I know when the other players are going to go. I can sense when they're going to stop or hit a shot or catch something, and I think that's just experience over the years, right? But no, it's usually if
Absolutely.
we're learning a tune, it's repetition. It's either through rehearsing together, jamming, or give me the song, I'll learn it. So when we meet for rehearsal, I'll be ready, kind of thing. But as far as I couldn't read and play at the same time. There's no way. I've never practiced that, and I think I would fall apart, right? So
I'm the same way. I think I was telling Ian the story, but I took strings in high school, which was I had the audition for it. I couldn't fucking read. The problem is in addition to the tempo, it's how it goes. So instead of going da 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 da, it might go da 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 da. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at the flow of the song.
Yep.
Which again, I'm like you. I don't know the fucking terms,
Yeah,
but if I listen to it, I can play that.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much sums it up. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure with training, or if I gave it a go, I would. I could do it.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
I don't know. Never needed it. I don't think.
Yeah, and what is the best way to send like your? Let me rephrase this question.
There you go. There you go. That way you can edit that shit out.
But basically, what I'm asking is, when you're teaching or you're in the learning process. I know I'm having a hard time with this, but it's like. I'm thinking tablature. I'm thinking sheet music. I'm thinking your own sort of, personal notes.
Yep.
Do you have a preference, or do you see people, or have you seen anything recently that might you think might help people?
So, not really, because it's really not for me, anyways. I don't know about other drummers, other musicians, but I don't use sheet music. It's just not a part of it's a zero part of my drumming, I guess, right? But so the guys I play with in my jazz trio, they both need sheet music. So when one of the guys calls out a song, they just flip to that page and obviously have to figure out what key they're in and so on. I actually just find it's a huge time waster. There you are sitting in between songs, and these guys are fumbling over through big fat ass binders that are top heavy on their music stands, and they're musicians, so they never like organize their binders or clean them up, right? So
of course,
and they're musicians.
So I think they're.
I've got a solution for those guys if they want.
Is it an iPad?
It's called my. Well, it's kind of like that actually. It's I make these custom teleprompters. I call it the yellow prompter. But basically, what it is it's a PC in a monitor case.
Oh yeah.
And it's basically you could have your slides. You can control it with a mouse. So basically, it would be basically an iPad, and they would control it with their feet.
Cool. So our sax player took all of his sheet music and literally went to like Staples or like one of those copy centers, and for like $7 just got it all scanned, and then he dumps it onto his iPad, so he can sort of. So it's like it's much cleaner on stage, and it's quicker to get to tunes because you can search just by song titles or whatever. And so I can see things like that coming in handy. Like I know watching the other people I play with, even outside of my jazz band, there's a few other shows I've done around Kingston with musicians I don't know. And I told the singer who hired me, just send me your MP3s. I will learn the songs in time for the show. But all the other band members needed their sheet music so they could be on the same page, so to speak, right on day one or rehearsal one or whatever, right? So I think for musicians or instruments that have theory, like drums aren't really theory, right? There's no music. You don't play C's or B minors or whatever. You play quarters, 8/16ths, or break them up kind of thing. And but with the sax or the bass or the rhythm section or the whatever, the guitars or whatever, I think they would need sheet music or at least tabs just to sort of get through the basics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. It's funny. I have my own because you've seen I do like a little solo show, and I hate my memory's not what it used to be. Well, my memory's not ever been good, but so I have this teleprompter thing I use, and it's got my. It's got everything I need on it, and basically my tablature sucks. Like I have like E0. That's what I use. And you know what that means? That means that's an E chord, and I don't put my finger down, my first finger down on the string, so it's a 0.
On your own personal tabs, you have a chord documented as just a 0?
As an E0. So it's an E chord.
Open
it's
palm.
like an E minor, right? It's an E minor, basically, is all it is.
Okay, so I'm thinking like a freaking guitar tab
versus
sheet.
E major.
6 lines, you put number for what fret you want to play, and then here's E0.
No. E0, yeah. But what I guess my point that I'm getting at is that, I mean, I am terrible with my chords. I know an E and A. I know basically majors and minors.
You're way better at chords than I am, man.
But the bottom line is whatever works for you, right? I guess, Sean.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah. So I'm thinking of a show I did here in Kingston not too long ago. Twice I've been able to do it now. Big soft cedar, like nice stage. It was a treat to play at this show, and there was no rehearsals. Everybody was just to show up and play that night, and. So I'd listen to the music, and you get on stage, your brain gets anxious and all that. So I have notes. They still send me the sheet music anyways because it's just an email to all band members. So
gotcha.
I'll just make my own notes on the sheet music as we're going through the set. But it won't be like, obviously it's not notation. It's not like E here, the bridges in C or whatever. It's just more like I just have like little language I use for myself, like closed hats, country style for the first 8 or something like that.
That's exactly.
And then I'll remind
E0,
myself
buddy.
somewhere in the middle there's a break, right? And or a pause or an ethereal part or something like that. So I'll just make more notes, maybe more towards the structure of the song, not so much technical about the song, right? And then I'm a drummer. Like really, I just have to keep the downbeat going for the listener. That's really all I have to do, right? And whatever I do in between those downbeats is kind of up to me. But that it is actually kind of easy. Like it's really not that hard to just stop when the band stops. And I tell everybody in the band, usually somebody in the band is kind of the
turn around and look at me.
What's that?
Right? You tell them to turn around and look at you.
I tell them to lift the neck of your guitar up and drop it when you want me to stop, and it's no problem.
Exactly.
Or I call it the big eyes. Just give me the big eyes. Open your eyes up because I know something's coming, right? So that usually works best in the middle of a tune when there's a break, or at when the song's about to end. Because by the end of the song, I'm usually so in the zone and I'm just loving drumming, I kind of forget like well, yeah, these songs are supposed to end, right? I just want to keep playing. So I have to remind myself to look up from the kit once in a while and look at whichever player I figure is going to give me the best visual cues, right? So
I like that. Give me the big eyes.
give me the big eyes, man. That's all I need.
I got a question for you. It's not necessarily related to sheet music, but just drumming in general. So I've hopped on a kit a few times, and I did like some of the basic drumming patterns and stuff like that.
Yep.
Was there a point where your feet were able to just act independently from your hands, or did that just come with just constant practice? Did it just click one day, or was it a slow progression of, okay, every time I hit the cymbal, my foot doesn't have to hit the bass?
Yeah, slow progression for sure. But then I found this book. There was one winter, Jamie and I moved to this little town just east of Kingston called Gananoque, and it was the quietest, boringest winter. And we had just moved. We had no friends. We didn't have kids then. I think Jamie was actually pregnant, so we were pretty nestled in for the winter. And I set my kid up upstairs, and I just bought a bunch of books, and I kind of went practice crazy. And so I bought this book called The Study of Interdependence, and it's kind of like that rock book I was telling you about. Like exercise 1 is basic, exercise 2 adds one extra challenge, I guess. Mm-hmm. So this book would take basic patterns, reverse them around. So if you were doing 8s on the hi-hat, 2 and 4 on the snare, 1 and 3 on the kick, now you're doing 8s on the kick, 2 and 4 on the hi-hat.
Jeez, yeah.
Right? And then it starts giving you exercises where it's every drummer, the bulk of drummers are right-handed, so your right hand is your dominant hand, right? So it gives you exercise to work on your left hand, and as you get into all 4 limbs, your left foot. So I can... And this is,
so it's just repetition is what you're saying, more than...
I think it's more like as I went through the exercise, you kind of break that wall down in your brain that doesn't let your left hand feel as strong as your right hand, I guess. And then once it got into like separating the left and right foot, so if you think about it, you got the 2 upper hands and the 2 lower feet, right? So combined, that's 4 limbs, but 2 of them are playing sort of top of the kit, 2 of them are playing the bottom of the kit, and nobody thinks about the left foot because it just sits and open closes a hi-hat. But once it got into those exercises where my left foot was like my 2 hands and my right foot were doing steady sort of time stuff, and it had my left foot doing like upbeats or something like that, like just doing off notes just with my left foot, that opened everything up. And when I can't remember the day or the time or whatever, but I just remember all of a sudden I didn't have to think anymore. It broke through, I think is the best way to put it. And now, like, when I play, I don't even think. It just kind of happens, right? I can almost, like, picture a fill in my head. And I'm no technical drummer. Like, I'm not a technically advanced drummer by any means. But if I picture it, I can always pull it off or do it, right? So, but it's because I'm not bound by my right foot or my right hand. I now have a left hand and a left foot that can add.
What about your 5th limb?
Well, that one...
Just flop that out the snare.
It's not big enough to make a lot of noise, right? So, yeah.
I got
you wouldn't even hear
question.
It would be like ghost notes, right?
Yeah, ghost notes on the snare. Hey, did he even put anything down on that?
Is he playing with his...
So...
It's a nub.
So for drumming too, as far as like a jazz, I'm not too familiar with jazz, but isn't there like a lot of different time signatures in jazz as opposed to just the standard 4/4 that rock and metal and stuff seem to follow?
So there would be for sure. I honestly think that kind of stuff is for hardcore jazz addicts and real technical musicians. We do some tunes in 3/4. We do some tunes in 5/4. That's about it.
Was it difficult to learn to play in a certain time signature? Because I find myself just locked in 4/4. Like I just can't comprehend.
I can't even
time
5/4. I'm like I can do 3/4, 4/4, 5/4. I'm like, how do you 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's fucked, man.
It's weird. It took some time to get used to it. The sax player in our band is, I guess, kind of the most experienced. He's like a Humber. Humber's like the, I don't know if you know Humber College, but they're the big jazz program in Canada. So he's a Humber grad for music. So this guy's a hired gun saxophone player around town, and he's really good. And as we were playing together, he would say, you got to solo more. It can't just be a saxophone show. It's got to be the bass has to solo, the drums have to solo. So we'd trade 4s and do quick little fills or solos, and then it leads to letting us do more. And then next he's like, you guys got to start playing in different time signatures. So we're gonna do take 5, take 10. We've got a song called 3 Flowers, and it's all 3/4, 5/4 time. And so we just spent some time as a band doing that. And then once we got the different time signatures down, then he's like, okay, well, now you got to start soloing in 5/4. It can't just be me soloing on the 5/4 tunes, right? So he did. And again, it was just one of those moments, like after doing it, and when you solo, you build confidence, right? And so now I have that confidence that we've played in 5/4.
Unless you suck at it like I do.
What? Well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I suck at it too, right? There's nothing like a drummer who can't find the one. That's probably one of the most embarrassing things, right? So,
What? Oh, yeah.
So, but now I can solo in 5/4 times. So they'll let us riff for a little bit. But what I find is we cheat a little bit. Like I asked the sax player, can you just kind of quietly, like, just hit a couple of like one notes, or like just hit the one once in a while, and it just so if I get thrown, I mean it's jazz, so if I get thrown off, nobody's going to notice, but I know. And then the band's out of sync, so he'll kind of keep time quietly in the background, or I'll do that while the bass player's soloing. I'll just keep time on the hi-hat a little bit. So we're still in it together, even though somebody's soloing, right? So, and that's opened everything up too. That's helped me figure out different time signatures and free forming through those too, right? So
that's pretty cool. 5/4. You've just
plus I
opened my
smoke
mind
before I play, so it really helps open the mind up a little bit too,
for
right?
Sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. Or I just care less. So
I'm going to pull him back to his story about him being asked to play a show, because it's kind of a cool story. Sean, you got to expand on that story where you were called and you had to play, because not only was it a great artist from Kingston who's been pretty hot around Canada, Miss Emily Fennell, right?
Yeah.
It also you played with two of the guys from the Hip that night as well.
That's
so
right,
you get a call. They're like, hey, would you like to play with Miss Emily Fennell tonight? Her drummer's sick or whatever the fuck happened, and you're like, yeah. And just to add some more fucking stress to your life, we got the bass player and the guitar player from the Hip playing with us too. So have fun with that, right?
Yeah, no pressure at all, man. I think I got the call at like 3 p.m. I was at work, and I was self-employed at the time, so I didn't have to like ask to leave work or anything. But I basically said, okay, I mean, you had me at, do you want to play? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want to play. And knowing it was her, I was like all about it. And she's like, well, sound check's at 7:30 tonight, and the show starts at 8. And I'd never heard of this theater before, so I just said yes. I didn't really know maybe how big she was. I know she's popular. I know she has a following, and she works hard for that. And but I had no idea what the venue was, so I showed up at this place called the Isabel Bader Center. I have to go in the back door, and I see the sign says stage door. And like there's a guy in a little uniform there with a dolly. He takes my drums in for me. I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be awesome! Like there's somebody who's actually. So they take me to the green room, and it's fully catered and all this stuff. And then I get in behind the main stage, and I still haven't been in the actual auditorium or theater room yet. And it's a brand new arts center in Kingston. I've never even. I mean, I knew it was there. I just didn't really pay attention to it. And then, so here I am in the backs of the main stage, and it's all the sound equipment. And like, I could tell right away, like this is something big, because like the equipment here is unbelievable. And then they opened the 2 doors that the band would come in on during the live show, and I instantly see. I'll never forget it. Like I see the soft cedar, I see the acoustic walls, and this place is gorgeous. And it's probably a 500 seater, maybe 700 seater or something. So it's pretty big.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's a gorgeous brand new theater, and it's built for sound. Like this thing, and this stage is massive. So I said,
apparently there's one in Ottawa like that where you can actually talk to the sound man from the stage and he can hear you. You can you don't need a mic to do that. I don't know if it's that good, but I know that the new auditoriums they're making are fucking killer.
Well, they should, yeah, because you can hire I think she just rents these spaces out, and she recoups the cost through ticket sales. So she rolls the dice whether she makes money off it or not. But she packs.
Gotcha.
She packs them every time. But this is like a unionized place. It's run by Queen's University. It's unionized. Like the sound guys are unionized.
Nice.
Like they're super professional, and I've never been more impressed with the sound crew ever. Like they knew their stuff. It was no pressure, no attitudes. And they were there to help you set up and make it sound good. And like I play on brushes. I can't even remember the last time I played on sticks. And sidebar, like I find that adds to a singer-songwriter kind of venue, because on sticks with bass and guitar, everyone's kind of competing for their space in the overall sound, right? Whereas I find all of us as musicians or rhythm section, especially, we're a little like we're backbeat and we're to keep the pulse going and all that, but we're also like a layer of her music. And I find when I'm on the brushes, all the other instruments come out more. You still get the kick drum, you still get the snare and the hats, but you're not overpowering the singer, right, or the rest of the band.
Yeah,
So,
you're letting it breathe, right?
yeah, there's room.
You're giving it that room.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right. So I told the sound guy right away, I'm playing on brushes, by the way, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "Just wait, like just hear it out. Let us get to the sound check."
Just wait.
He's
Not that bad.
yeah. Who hired this drummer, man? And
Yeah, who the
so
fuck's
they,
this guy?
anyways, I guess whatever he does his sound guy magic, and was just made the whole thing sound awesome. So.
What was it like to be playing drums and looking over and you're like, holy fuck, that's the dude from the Hip playing bass looking at me for accents?
Well,
How was that?
So it was good. Obviously, it was, I loved it and all that. It was an honor. It was a treat, and made my year, really, right? And
Yeah, for sure.
so, but I've met him before. So Rob Baker, the dude with the super long hair, where our jazz band plays, he comes out regularly to see us play. So he goes,
I see.
Yeah, so we've sort of, not that I know him by any means, but we know each other sort of just through that venue sort of thing. So, so we went and played, and I got nice compliments from him after the show, and felt really good. And I think the best part was when they were introducing the band around. I think it was just before the last song. She brings the band out to do the introductions, and she's about to come to the drummer, me, and she's like, so in case anybody doesn't know, this guy on the drums behind us just got the call at 3:00 this afternoon, and literally had like 2 hours to listen to the MP3s and get himself down here and leave work and get in a suit and tie and get ready to play drums. And and just to make it, like you were saying, just to make it a little more stressful or anxious or whatever.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, you're also playing with two guys from the Hip on a big, beautiful stage.
Which
right?
is which is for the people, because this is going to be on the interweb. If you're not familiar with the Tragically Hip, they're like fucking Canadian royalty. Like you can't. There's just nobody bigger right now,
100%,
or ever.
100%
for that matter. Yeah. So that must have been some experience. Well, that's fucking awesome. Good for you, man.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely thanks for sharing. That's a kick-ass story.
Yeah. I do. So now we're going to switch gears, and we are going to ask you a couple questions that are going to be a little weird, but it's called our Wheel of Misfortune. So my question to you is, what was the worst thing you've ever had happen to you on stage? Like, you shit your pants, or you've ripped, you had diarrhea and you like literally almost, couldn't make it to the toilet, or you were sick. Something like a funny little story.
Well,
from your travels. You must have something
nothing
from
shit
fucking...
in the pants kind of funny. Like nothing that happened to me, but maybe something that happened being part of a band.
Oh, that's even better.
But,
Yeah. That's even better.
So I can't say any names, but I played with this band. I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a great band, let's say, but the sax player and me have always played together, and this lady needed a band, and so we were part of it. But she's not extra talented. She's a great singer-songwriter, but she's just not a talented musician, I guess. And so everybody knows the song "Proud Mary," right? We all know the opening shots of do 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 do, all upbeats, right? Right. Everybody's heard that, and most intermediate plus musicians should be able to get through those opening shots. And for God's sake, if you're going to put it in your fucking set list, you should be able to play the song, right? So we're playing. It's just like a bar kind of gig, and she pulls this song out. So we bust into we're literally like 4 upbeats into the song, and she misses the upbeats and stops. And literally, no, everybody stop. And we're like, if there's one rule for anybody listening, don't stop, man. Work through the breaks.
Keep going.
Don't stop. That's not your job to stop, because then you're done after that, right? You lose everybody.
That's right.
And she stopped, and then she counted it in again, and she fucked up coming back in again. And had to stop again, and so James and I, the sax player, just had to sit there going like, "What just happened there?" So that was a little embarrassing, I guess. But what can you do, man? Well, I'll tell you one best story since you're asking, right? So one story I remember way back, early on in my life, when I was probably too young to be in a bar, but our band was playing in a bar in Etobicoke outside of Toronto somewhere. Okay. It was a shitty gig. It was a rough Turkish kind of bar. 2 Turkish guys owned it. The bouncers were Turkish. They were all just rough dudes. And so we were playing, and nobody cared because there was a hockey game on. And the show was over, and some drunk lady came up to me, and she said, she's like, "Oh, you were really good. I really enjoyed watching you play. My son, he's like 6 years old. He wants to get into drumming. Do you have any advice?" for him? And I said, well, not really, but here you go. And I give her a pair of drumsticks. I said, that's probably the best advice I can give you. Here's a pair of drumsticks.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, you're so amazing. And she reaches in to like give me this hug and a kiss. And I'm like, okay, whoa, whoa, whoa. I just wanted to give you a pair of drumsticks. And then out of nowhere, her fucking lumberjack boyfriend, I just remember the corner of my eye. He's literally running through tables, like pushing people out of the way to grab me, throws me on my back onto this table, like right out of a movie,
Nice.
right? Like the table breaks, I end up on the ground, and then these two Turkish bouncers come in, take the guy outside, and I have no idea what happened to him after that.
It's probably not good, whatever
Holy
it was.
shit.
Yeah, right? So, yeah, it's just crazy. You never know, man.
So since you primarily play with brushes, do you do any like stick tricks at all with it? I don't know if you can do any of that with brushes, but you know some of the drummer fails I could envision, or
Like flick your knob while you're playing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's a trick, but some people like spin the stick or whatever when they're
Flying squirrel?
in between snare hits or whatnot.
Nope, nothing like that. No real tricks or anything like that. Just using brushes for what they're for, especially in a jazz setting, like washing them on the snare skin just to give that washy sound and that kind of thing. But not really, no tricks.
Okay, I got probably one last question for you. All right, so you went north to south, whatever, you with this band. Tell me what the weirdest story from that trip. Because clearly there had to be at least one weird story, whether it was at a bar or people you met or people in the band or whatever. Just a really weird, strange story from your past.
Ooh, from that road trip, it was all like the whole thing was really weird. Like we literally rolled into town, threw up posters, got a gig, and threw up posters, and hoped people would show up, sort of thing, right? So every night was kind of a crazy night. It was a bunch of rock and roll guys on the road, and you can imagine some of the craziness.
And a magician.
And a magician.
Megaseth.
What was the coolest trick that guy did?
So this was the best part about traveling with a magician is every time you go into a bar, your drinks are free, basically, right? Because he'll just bet people drinks. I can do this. So he had the best trick is the floating dollar bill. And I'm sure everybody's seen it, but it's hard to explain over the phone. But just take walk up to anybody and say, the bigger the bill, the better this trick works, right? So you get a $20 bill, $100 bill, whatever, and he kind of holds it between his hands, and he pulls his hands apart so the bill's standing up, and then he pulls his hands away and the bill stays there floating in front of him, and he'll literally like wave his hands around and circle the bill, and it just sits and floats right in front of you, and it just blows everybody away, and that was definitely by far his biggest trick.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. Well, I won't keep you, but I want to just say thanks for doing this for me. I appreciate it. I know it's kind of weird and we got off to a little rocky start, but I learned something new tonight again.
Yeah, good.
But have you got any plugs anywhere you're playing or anybody you're working with? Or, we mentioned Emily Fennell. You had mentioned, was there something that you were working on with her? Has that come out or is it not coming out?
No, well, she was going to do some live stuff, supposed to be whatever you call it, mixed down or whatever, but I haven't heard anything about that, so I don't know if anything comes out about it. But honestly, it's it's not a full-time thing for me, so I play about once or twice a month. The jazz thing's pretty steady. Sometimes that leads to extra gigs like holiday gigs and conferences or corporate gigs or whatever, and but nothing major to plug. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what bar are you playing at? What are you playing at in where are you playing with the trio in Kingston?
We played a restaurant downtown called Olivea's, and it's sort of a fine casual Italian restaurant. And actually, if I was going to give them a plug, it's the fact that they do a Tuesday night jazz and dinner thing, and we play the second Tuesday of every month. And so every Tuesday, there's 4 bands basically that one guy
on rotation. That's
exactly.
cool.
But they pay us, they feed us, they let us drink, and it's a crowd that actually they're there to see jazz, right? So our band packs the place. We're a trio. We play some pretty high tempo jazz numbers, swing jazz, and everybody's always pleasantly surprised. But for the owner to do that, to pay you properly, to feed you, and keep you going, it's really good to see that. So I give him credit for keeping live music going in Kingston. 100%.
Props to him.
Yeah, 100%,
all right.
100%.
Well, thanks, Sean Jensen, drummer extraordinaire and fill-in drummer to the stars.
Second gun for hire. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, Ian and I thank you once again, and tell your wife she's a twat.
As soon as I get off the phone, I'll let her know. I'll remind her every chance I get.
All right, I love you, brother,
Right.
and I hope to see you very, very, very soon.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, see you, Sean.
See ya.
Bye. Well, in my defense, it sounds harsh, but we're bringing the word twat back. That's something between her and I, where we're like, one day we were sitting there drinking, we go, you know what? Twat's a great word. Why don't people use it anymore? So then we instantly said, we're bringing it back. And the best part is her sister is like totally like a feminist, so we use it every opportunity with her as well. Because she's a twat as well.
Excellent.
She's my number 2 on my list. All right, well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Ian and I are going to go grab some food, and y'all can just fucking listen to some tunes. Here, I'm going to play some Emily Fennell a little bit on the way out. Not a lot, but a little sample. If you want to check her out, and Sean...
Emily Fennell.
Yeah. Check out The Hip if you haven't also.
Hip.
Do it. All right. Peace out.
Deuces.
Deuces.
I'm not afraid to know. It's just a roll. I'm not suppressing my need. This is a land of grief. I've heard the masses say we'll find a better
Let's Talk Indie is an alienated production. Copyright 2018. Be sure to check us out online at www.letstalkindie.com.